Okay, I think we're back. Had to cut out a bunch of intercom systems about a plane arriving. So, just can't emphasize enough that there is going to be a significant maintenance issue here in China in the next couple of years. And that may burden their growth in some respects, but it could also just contribute to their GDP. Who knows? But I can tell you firsthand, the things I saw, many of the things I saw, would absolutely not be tolerated in the United States, and someone would have to fix them, and someone would have to pay for them. Right now, that's not happening, so they don't have that additional burden. Okay, lastly, probably the thing I've been thinking about the most is what exactly is wealth generation? And fundamentally, I think wealth generation is simply converting raw materials into finished goods. That is what China is doing right now. They have their own raw materials, pretty limited actually, and I'm going to look into that a little further, but a lot of raw materials are shipped in here, they're brought into the factories, and they're converted into finished goods, and they're exported and consumed here. So in the United States, in the last 20 years of my basic awareness of economics, and jobs, getting a job, trying to make a living, it's been pretty rough. There's been all these spits and spatters. We had the internet boom in the late 90s. Then we had this housing boom, and they were not really substantial things. They were blips. Overall, over that whole time period, the last 20 years, I personally witnessed a lot of the manufacturing coming here, first to Mexico, and then to China. And I'm talking about just hardcore converting raw materials into finished goods. Yeah, we still do that in the United States. It's pretty significant. But the 8 million people that have lost their jobs in the last 2 years, I think that is probably actually a long-term indication of the manufacturing base shifting outside of the United States to places like China. I don't think those jobs are coming back. I mean, that's hard to say. It's hard to say, but we can't have another housing boom. We did that. We did that, I think, in both Bush administrations, come to think of it. We can't have another internet boom like we did with the Clinton administration. I don't think there's any booms left. It's just getting down to some very fundamental, hardcore wealth generation, economic growth. And the United States has lost its key engine to that growth and that wealth generation. Do stockbrokers generate wealth? No, they're just taking a piece of the pie from, say, the profits of the company that, or the company is indicating profits, and so the stock goes up and they take their little piece. Do bankers generate wealth? No. I mean, they loan money to companies that are building, buying capital, equipment, things like that, to generate wealth. But again, they're not directly involved. They're facilitating it. And same thing with engineers. Are we generating any wealth? No. We are simply facilitating the wealth generation. Oh, I'm going to have to pause again. So, the other argument is that there's a lot of U.S. companies that have moved manufacturing over to China to obviously reduce costs. So they can be more profitable. And those profits come back to the United States. For example, everybody talks about how the iPad and the iPod are made here in China, and all the profits, their portion of it is only a small percentage, maybe 30–40% of the overall cost, and then the rest of these quote profits come to the United States. But then after all the costs and issues that Apple has, the profit overall for Apple is maybe what, 10%, 5%? I'm not sure exactly. But this argument that profits generate wealth within the United States, I think is slightly false, because it again comes back to that kind of trickle-down theory that we already have experienced late in our Republican-type governments, where the tax cuts that supposedly will cause wealthy people to invest money in manufacturing and et cetera, will trickle down and help workers. But I think it's been pretty well documented that the trickle-down theory does not work. Yeah, some of these big American companies have made significant profits, but they're nothing greater than that they had when they were doing operations in the United States. Okay, so you proponents of the trickle-down theory, if you still think it works, then come to China. They're essentially pursuing the same process. They think that they can dump and invest huge portions of money into large urban development, the East Coast in particular, but now they're starting to move west in the hopes of drawing the 800 million people that are in poverty in this country out of poverty. Will it work? Boy, I don't know. It's a very tough question. But the one thing they do have going from them, I believe, is that they understand very fundamentally that wealth generation is converting natural or raw materials into finished goods. Something to really think about, because I don't see any of that type of conversation in the United States. Yeah, there's talk about helping small businesses. There's talk about getting more credit available for companies, but seems to be no fundamental conversation about economic development and wealth generation. Because simply having the United States be some sort of financial capital for the rest of the world doesn't generate wealth for us. It's simply taking a little piece of the real wealth that is being generated in other parts of the country. And for God's sakes, India has 8% growth. And they're doing the same thing. They're focusing on manufacturing. They're focusing on exports. Every month, the United States is now in a trade deficit with nearly every trading partner we have. And that's just a huge, you can just hear the cash suck out of our country, and you can see where it's coming. I'm just looking out here, there's probably a dozen large container ships right off the coast here. They're showed in that beach trip. The airport is right along the coast here. And there it is. Now, is there a way to have fair and balanced trade? I think so. And that's what the old WTO is all about. But either they've missed the boat on something or they got a long way to go, because I think what we're seeing in the United States is exactly what Japan saw starting about 20 years ago, what Europe saw maybe even 30 years ago, where you just kind of stall and there's no growth. So then the next question is, what about this growth? That's a whole other discussion. Alright, so there you have it. Those are my thoughts about some more kind of significant, I think, things that are happening on this planet. You be the judge. Look at the data. Look what's going on. Get a feel for what's happening in the United States. if you had an opportunity to come here and get a feel for what's happening here, it's completely different. In some ways, I feel more at home here because I am an engineer. I am a professional in the manufacturing arena. That's what I've been trained in engineering school and design school to do, and that's essentially what I've been doing in the United States. So a lot of what's going on here is very familiar to me, and that's comforting. When I go back to the United States, there seems to be this constant struggle that I have to deal with as the base continues to diminish. It's a really tough call. I mean, the trade-offs are pretty obvious. So, more to come. I look forward to getting on the plane, though. I look forward to getting back to the United States. I have a completely different perspective on the planet, as every time I go overseas helps me to be more global. That I appreciate. I do sense that I think my career is going to take a very dramatic shift in this next year. Something is very fundamental in my approach, in my life, my career is going to change because of this experience. I can sense that. So I'm excited about that, and we'll just see what happens. See you later, China. Coming home, America. Bye-bye.